you.
I just have some questions, but still on neighbourhood houses, funding for neighbourhood houses. So firstly, in relation to the neighbourhood houses capital improvement program funding reallocation, there's $2 million allocated to that across the forward estimates until 2027-28. Can you give us an overview of the housing stock that the department or the government owns when it comes to neighbourhood houses, and how that funding, that $2 million, is allocated towards the infrastructure of neighbourhood houses, and how much was spent in 24-25 as well of that?
See if we can get that information for you.
Through you, Minister. So there's $6 million allocated for neighbourhood house capital improvement program over 3 years, and the funding for 24-25 wasn't spent and has been reprofiled to 27-28. In terms of the portfolio of properties and things, that's managed through Homes Tasmania.
Right. So I know that there's neighbourhood houses that need improvement work. So what's the barrier to actually spending that funding? What's the process for neighbourhood houses accessing the funding for capital improvements that are needed, and why isn't it being spent?
I can answer for you.
Through you, Minister. So there was a program undertaken to look at the status of the houses and the work that needed to be done on the houses. And that was done, I understand, quite a few years ago in 2021. So there's work underway at the moment to reconsider that and to work through what actually is current and current pricing and so on. We do have a number of houses who clearly need some building works, and they are, sort of top of the list, if you like. And that work started in 24-25 in terms of, if you like, auditing those properties. So that's why we reprofiled that funding to the latter years, so we would have that ready.
So what will be the process for determining how that funding is allocated? Will neighbourhood houses themselves have a say in that? Will it be something they apply for, or will it be Homes Tasmania who determine that? Or
Through you, Minister. So that's a process where we'll establish a steering committee, and that will include representation from Homes Tasmania, as well as Department of Premier and Cabinet, and Neighbourhood Houses Tasmania as well as the peak body.
so is that really necessary? I mean, it's maintenance works. Do we really need to, what's the rationale for establishing a steering committee? I'm sure neighbourhood houses know what their maintenance needs are, where things are falling apart, how money needs to be allocated. It seems like a bit of bureaucratic overkill for a relatively small amount of money when you consider it's going to be allocated across 38 neighbourhood houses. The administrative burden of actually administering a steering committee, the funding could perhaps better go into actually maintenance on the houses.
Through you, Minister. So it's not necessarily small maintenance jobs, it's more large sort of capital improvements, and really it's around ensuring that we've got everyone around the table to ensure that we're fair and equitable in our decision making and allocating the funding in the most appropriate way.
And prioritising. Yeah.
So will Neighbourhood Houses Tasmania have a seat on that steering committee?
Through you, Minister, yes.
Thank you. And my other question is around the funding, the more ongoing funding. So, Minister, I heard you say you encourage community sector organisations, including neighbourhood houses, to put in a budget submission through the community consultation process. They will tell me when I encourage them that, well, we did that this year and we got nothing additional to what we requested. The budget's only getting worse, so what's the point of wasting our time and writing another submission or the same submission again, only to just be disappointed again. Neighbourhood houses are resilient, but they have their limits. They're already stretched past those limits, and we can only rely on the goodwill of volunteers and community sector workers for so long before they burn out, and the essential services that they provide to 28,000 Tasmanians are really jeopardised by the government not increasing the funding that it provides for these really essential services, which when you consider, it's 31 to $50 million across 38 neighbourhood houses, really isn't a lot of money when you consider the number of Tasmanians that they reach. So how can they be encouraged or feel encouraged given they just keep getting knocked down every time they request additional funding from the government, and it appears that this really isn't a priority for the government?
Is there a specific neighbourhood house you're particularly concerned about?
Well, I've spoken to a number of neighbourhood houses within the network and Neighbourhood Houses Tasmania, and their feedback is they are stretched. They put in these budget submissions, and then the level of funding they receive is not increased. It's maintained, and then if you look over the forward estimates, there are out years where there is nothing against the line item. So when they see that, what are they to think?
So since 21, we've put in over $40 million to neighbourhood houses. It's a substantial amount of money. Having said that, I too feel concerned about these completely essential community assets. I'm very aware of the volunteer networks that are engaged as well. And I was just asking specifically if there's one you were very concerned about, because it does help to highlight that with us. But what I can do as the Minister is really encourage everybody to put their budget submission bids in. If you don't have a budget submission bid in, you're not at the table. I want everybody to be at the table.
Well, why would you raise false hopes like that?
Well, is that a question or is that a statement?
It's obviously a question.
I don't think we're living in a world of false hopes. What we need to do is make sure we stay engaged with our community sector, and bluntly and sadly, we have a budget problem. I don't think anybody at this table is able to magically find money for the budget that doesn't exist.
Well,
what we can do, and what I can do,
you've got a budget.
what I can do is be an advocate for people, particularly in the community sector and also multicultural sector, which suffers from the same challenges, to get your budget bids in, and I will fight for you. So that's my commitment. That's what I will do, and I ask everybody at neighbourhood houses to truly consider that. I'm not sure what else I can add other than I think characterising it as false hope is probably going a bit far. What I would like to do is encourage everybody to put their budget bids in.
So given that we do have a budget problem, and it's quite clear that a significant amount of that budget problem was caused by $5 billion worth of election commitments over 3 elections, so in recent times, and the fact that the government pretty much refuses to consider introducing any new revenue measures, there is a budget problem. How can community sector organisations have hope when there are no proposed revenue measures to help fix this budget problem? And is that something you as a minister will advocate for within your cabinet to try and help fix this problem so that there is more funding pool to be allocated to the essential services that Tasmanians need every day through these community sector organisations who are really hurting?
So I think your question was, do I concede there's a budget problem? Yes. Do I have a proposal and ways of fixing that? I raise my voice on those issues consistently and constantly, not just in this sector, but more broadly for economic development right across Tasmania, particularly in my area of innovation, science and digital economy, which has great capacity to grow, the tech sector in particular, and science and research. So there are many parts to this. It's an engine room with many layers to it. The Treasurer has a view of how he needs to manage the budget going forward. I have a view that as part of that process, I need to be the best advocate I can be for people in my portfolio areas who are at the front line of serious, important community work, and that is my commitment. Maybe in future, as things pick up, we will be having a slightly different conversation. But look, I think it's fair to say we've got a budget problem. It's pretty clear. It's been all over the newspapers. We went to election on it. We've got this situation. The best thing I can do is offer to be the best advocate I can be for the community sector to push for the funding they need through the budget process. And the budget process, which happens every year, is a prioritisation. So that does happen. You would have seen it all here before amongst portfolios. That's what I can commit to.
So the